Hi everybody, I am Dr. Amy Nilsson, and today I kind of wanted to talk about, I was going to talk about more methylation stuff, and I think we'll do that next week too. We're going to do this little ongoing segment on methylation and the methylation map, and we're going to talk about that biochemistry. But I kind of halted that for today just because this has come up multiple times this last week with a lot of my patients. We want to understand kind of what to eat when our GI is inflamed. And actually, it helped me make a little handout, and I could probably post that handout if you guys want me to, on how to kind of prepare different types of soups to kind of eat if you have had just a really, really bad inflamed bowel, and maybe you had a flare-up, an IBS flare-up, or if you had an ulcerative colitis flare-up, or if you had a celiac flare-up, how to eat. What do I eat first? And I think there's a little bit of probably a problem because in the hospital setting, we may not get the best information on what foods to introduce first. And you can kind of see this happening time and time again. And I'd like to kind of just go through it because especially I just typed up this handout. So we're going to discuss it and then talk about maybe juicing and the different soups available and what to do. So this is just a good resource for all my patients this week, especially who are struggling with like, what do I eat? I'm so frustrated, and I get you. I totally do. It's hard. It's hard making nutritional changes. And then also like, it's hard, like rearranging those habits. And, that's important to know, is that a lot of times nutritional changes, like we can't necessarily go back to how things were when we developed the issue, so if we had a dairy issue, a gluten issue, those probably aren't going to get reintroduced, or if you eat them, they might be a very small amount once a year type thing. And for me, I don't even eat them anymore. Like I just can't handle the aftermath. And so pizza doesn't look good to me. Pizza looks painful to me. It smells good, sure, but yeah, I kind of make a choice out of that. And that's a hard space to get to. So we're going to do this with lots of compassion and not food shame, but I'm going to go over this little handout that I made. It's called the Doable Gaps Diet, and let's talk about that. But I guess I'll give you my little intro. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I work here in Austin, Texas, and I see clients from a lot of reasons, but mostly my three little areas are digestive health, and I worked at the IBS treatment center in Santa Monica, and that's where I got a lot of my experience with helping irritable bowel patients and IBD patients, that kind of thing. And I do the functional workups on that. And then I do a lot with neurotransmitter health and hormonal health. So those are like my three areas that I kind of focus on. And yeah, I'm always learning. In fact, back to our topic. Like, let's say you are super duper inflamed. You have had diarrhea for a long time. You maybe have a watery stool, and we want to make sure you're seeing a doctor. Don't use this as your doctor. We're gonna make sure you get in for your appointment with your gastro or whoever you're seeing to help manage your health, right? So, and nothing major is happening, or you're in the midst of getting the workups for the nothing major is happening kind of thing. So what you want to do is you want to calm down the digestive tract. And this also works for if you are just recovering out of surgery, or if you're recovering after a major infection, or I use this for people who are going, these kind of nutritional therapies are going to be used for people who are going through chemotherapy, or who maybe just had a bowel resection, or a lot of reasons. Surgery, infection, treatments to cancer, or even like we just mentioned, your IBS flare-up situation, your IBD flare-up, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, celiac. So they are recovering, they're on the road to recovery. So what do we do? What do we eat? Two main kind of diets are the GAPS diet. And GAPS, actually, I have the book, but I think I brought it home, so I don't have it here. Stands for Gut and Psychological Syndrome. It was a book written by Natasha Campbell McBride, and written many years ago, probably, I don't know, 1990s maybe. I think her area of focus was autism. I think she had, maybe her son or a family member had autism, and they had really a hard time with the bowels. Like, they were always dealing with diarrhea. And then she noticed that, of course, the neurological component of that was also flared up. And that's important to notice too, because we might also do this type of diet when we want to calm down the GI nervous system connection, right? So the nervous system itself will flare up, and maybe the digestive tract is fine, but if somebody has really vulnerable psychiatric conditions, doing the GAPS diet would be useful. I have a lot of, myself, I eat a lot of inflammatory stuff, and my anxiety goes up really high. So I, if I eat a non-inflammatory diet, then that really stabilizes that. And it took me a long time to realize that. I had to, it was a lot of trial and error. So, and a long time to accept that, right? Because a lot of times we tell ourselves, I'm fine, I can eat this thing. You're not fine. And your inflammation is showing up in the nervous system way before it's showing up in the tissue of the bowel. So that's how we kind of, tell ourselves that we can eat these things that aren't really great. In the United States, food supply is not the greatest in the world. It's very much a lot of chemicals, a lot of dyes, a lot of flavor enhancers, a lot of these sugar alternatives. They're actually neurotoxins. Ugh. It's like, nothing against the Buc-ee's company, but go into any Buc-ee's and you're going to see not an array of, preservatives and artificial foods at its finest, right? Now, you on a day-to-day, basis want to choose healthy. Your habit, 85 to 95% of the time, should be healthy. And that's okay. I know we get into some discussions about like the behaviors around eating and creating the tendency for disordered eating. And especially when you're working with children, you don't want somebody to develop into an eating disorder, right? And that is very, very true. And especially in, functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, we can kind of take away foods and get you down to 5 foods. And that's not right. That's orthorexia, right? So what we want to do is actually expand your ability to eat food and increase that. Now, what the definition of food is what we're going to talk about. Food is food that is grown and is not from a package. Well, I mean, I could see you opening the package and getting to the fresh spinach, but you know what I mean. Like, it's not been through a process with preservatives or any of the artificial kind of ingredients. Like, you really want to cook food as nature grew it, and so you want to be able to, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, meats that come from really healthy sources. And we kind of talk about this on that handout, where feedlot beef is not, is an inflamed beef, and they've done studies, and I think it's IGF-1 in insulin growth factor 1. I might correct myself on that, but when you compare the feedlot beef versus grass-fed and grass-finished beef, meaning that's all they ate was grass, you see lower inflammatory markers, to the point where even the American Oncology Society or Association has made the comment of like, hey, our patients who are going through treatment, we have told them not to eat feedlot beef because that is a growth factor for a tumor. So you can compare everybody who's getting treatment, and if they stick to grass-fed, grass-finished, and stay away from feedlot, they have better response to their cancer therapies. So that should tell you something. And I mean, like, I think in Texas here, we're pretty spoiled because we can go get that at H-E-B. We have that at our grocery store. Other places, you might have to go to a farmer's market. You may have to kind of ask around. You may have to figure out a grower, so it is possible. It depends on where you live. But anyway, so we're talking about inflammation. So circling back to that. So you you know, you want to kind of develop meats that are healthy for the system. The GAPS diet utilizes basically chicken, and then also utilizes basically like maybe grass-fed beef. Now, let's say you're vegetarian. If you're vegetarian, you could probably do what's called the Beeler's broth. And you could probably look that up. All these you can just Google. I mean, I didn't write them, but I have handouts on them that I wrote, but it was based upon things that were, you know, provided to me. So Beeler's broth. Beeler was, a doctor who developed a vegetable-based soup that was easy to digest. So you have Natasha Campbell, who does GAPS. That's going to be kind of a chicken or a beef type thing. Beeler's broth is different types of vegetables. So the gist of this, let's talk about GAPS first. So, and she has expanded a lot of work. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. She tends to like the dairy, and I'm like, I have not met a person who can really do well with dairy. I do those food allergy panels. I've talked about that a lot. And the food allergy panels will show up with dairy reactions all the time. So I don't push dairy a lot. And so that's where she and I probably differ. And guess what? Yeah, everybody, we're going to have differing opinions on stuff. And so I think as long as you kind of use some logic on things, then you can, you know, like figure out what's right for you and work with a person, you know. So you're going to see these different kind of, you know, takes on stuff. So again, like GAPS, there's a couple different books. She has a lot of different, you know, things, but I'm going to talk about her beginning with this diet. So the GAPS diet, what is it? Well, the nice thing is you take like a pack of chicken legs, which is the cheapest cut of meat like ever, you know, so you can go to Natural Grocers and get a pack of chicken legs for $2. And maybe there's 4 of them in there or something. So you can do as many chicken legs as you want, and then you put it in like, you know, water, because you're going to boil these. So I usually use pretty clean water for this, right? Because you're sick, you're vomiting all the time. You're just coming off a major infection, a major flu, or major surgery, right? So you're going to want to have some really clean water source, you know, maybe look into what you're using for that. Reverse osmosis water is like 25 cents a gallon at Natural Grocers. So I usually go get that. So here you're going to boil the chicken down, okay? And you're using kind of like, using that cut of meat. You could use chicken wings, you could use chicken thighs. You know, wings and the legs have all those like tendons and structures, the soft tissue. So what you're doing is boiling that to kind of break it down and do a little extraction out of that. You also the skin's got to be there. So the skin also has like some soft tissue and some adipose tissue. So you're going to break that down, right? So you're breaking this down, you're simmering it for about 30-ish minutes is usually how to cook a chicken. Now you could do a whole chicken if you wanted to. I mean, that's okay. You could boil a whole chicken in a stock pot and do it that way too. These are just the easy. We're trying to hit the easy button, because when you're frustrated doing anything more, let's do simple when you're frustrated. And that's, my patients this week had levels of frustration. So this is for you all. So we are just doing simple. So you went to the store, you got a pack of chicken legs, you put it in some water. You could put salt. Sometimes people are a little weird about some pepper. People will tear them up. So like, to be safe, maybe you just put a little salt. Garlic is nice too. Garlic will tear some people up. So let's say we're just trying to be the least inflammatory. So you're just going to put a little bit of Himalayan salt, a little bit, meaning 2 pinches, right? So you basically boil it until the chicken's cooked. And then you use your tongs and you take the chicken out and you let it sit and you let it kind of just get to, you know, so you can kind of, so that you can kind of debone it, right? Without burning yourself. This is obvious, but I burn myself all the time because I try to push the limit. I try to see, can I debone this chicken yet? Ouch, it's too hot. Ah, my patience. I'm not the most patient person, so you know, you let it sit till it's comfortable so you touch it and don't get burned. And then basically you take out the meat. You can leave the soft, there's like going to be the skin and stuff like that. I feed that to the cat, or if you have a dog, well, watch the bones, right? They get caught in their throat. But like, you know, cats and dogs love that stuff. So anyway, that meat is now free to go back into the soup, or it's free to go into your refrigerator for later. You're going to make a chicken sandwich with it, or maybe you're going to put on a chicken salad as you get healed up. But we're talking about, you're not going to eat that yet, but I would just put it back in the soup. Let's pretend you're inflamed and you're trying to eat. So put it back in your soup. And then you could do like carrot and celery. So you chop up a carrot and you chop up a celery, and then you can you could have probably put that in at the end when things are simmering. I mean, 30 minutes of rolling boil on a carrot's going to pulverize it. You could do it that way too if you don't mind your carrot broken down to almost a mash. But sometimes you want some texture to it. Depends on how you like things. So anyway, throw that in at some point, and then you can kind of boil those down. So that's going to be the nature of your soup. Now, let's say you want to season it. A real basic seasoning is just what we talked about would be, you could put some oregano in there, you could put some cumin, you could put some seasonings like, turmeric, stuff like that works great too. If you are just so inflamed you don't want to deal with that, you could just stick to the Himalayan salt. We had, the chicken broth, and we had the carrots and the onions, the carrots and the celery, and then we had the chicken meat. That is fine. You could even just do the broth, add more salt to flavor it. You don't go gangbusters on salt. You want to be like reasonable, and this is something where people are always like, what about salt? Like, it's so crazy about salt. Salt, yeah, if you have high blood pressure and congestive heart failure, you are going to watch your salt. For people like me, I have like low blood pressure. I get up from a chair and I get, it means I need to drink more water and take electrolytes. And all summer long, I've been seeing people who just are dehydrated and they need electrolytes, right? So I'm always like, hey, you need electrolytes and you need to salt. And then immediately everybody's knee-jerk reaction is usually like, but salt. You're like, whoa. You don't have hypertension. You're fine. You actually need salt. And I can tell on your labs you're dehydrated. And so what we're going to do is like, let you have some salt. It's not like, the public enemy is not salt. It's actually an electrolyte balance that helps your kidney out, just like water does. And you're not going to overdo it, but you don't have to eat, you have to suffer and eat bland food. You can actually have some seasoning. So anyways, we're going to do that. So here we've got that basic, right? So you're going to do that little broth, and maybe you're going to do that for the next couple of days. Maybe you do that for 2 or 3, times. It's that, broth or the soup. Now, as the soup advances, you could add some garlic to it. You could add some ginger. I love ginger, so ginger, garlic, onion, then you could add more seasoning to it. So you see how you're just enriching the soup. You're making more soup. You're making more flavor to it. So that would actually be okay. So you're kind of adding things in it that are easy to break down. They're not going to be hard. In the GAPS world, maybe you do this for like a week or 2, and then what you can do is start introducing some food, So the food I wrote down here, which was on this handout that I'm going to post, the easiest vegetables to digest. And I take this from the anti-inflammatory type lists that I've done based upon food sensitivity panels. And then I also kind of maybe cross-reference the low FODMAP stuff, So veggies that are awesome after you've done a week of the soup. Then you can do squash. That's going to be like your summer squash, your zucchini squash. You're going to cook all this. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could pressure cook it. Pressure cooking breaks it down even more. You have to have one of those like, what are those things called? They're at Target. What are they called? They are like, it's not a Ninja. It's a like thing. It'll come to me in a second. I think my friend used to have one, and what is it called? Anyway, it's a pressure cooker, and it basically can break this down. So that's nicer because again, you want to break this stuff down so you can absorb it better. So kind of like pretend you're like a little baby getting food for the first time. You're going to give them the squash, right? Acorn squash, butternut squash. You're going to give them pumpkin and zucchini and all that kind of stuff. And then the other type of extensive list would be carrot and celery are fine, olives, parsnip, turnip, sweet potato, I would stay away from white potato, because why? Starches. White potato, we overeat it. That's because of French fries and chips, and then mashed potatoes are good. And so it's like people kind of overeat and overdo the potatoes. We're kind of overexposed to it. It does show up on inflammatory type stuff. Now, you know, nightshades are the argument of the hour. I usually work off from the food sensitivity panels, and you know, minimally I see tomatoes and eggplant, but I think sweet potato is sweet potato a nightshade? Oh, I better look that up. I think so, but now I don't. Anyway, sweet potato is usually fine. It's rarely going to come up on the food sensitivity panel. Turnips are great. Spinach is great. You know, and we're going to cook all this. Silver beets, those are great because they're lower glycemic index. Bok choy is really great. You can grill it. Yeah, so those would be wonderful anti-inflammatory kind of vegetables that you're going to cook. And maybe you do the gap soup for like lunch, and then maybe you do this kind of thing for dinner, right? And then a meat, you know, we talked about meat, like a chicken. You're not going to do any sushi. You're not going to do like raw fish. You're going to cook it, you know, so that's going to be a thing. Then as things are, you know, going along and you're just getting better, you could probably add some fruit. That's after your healing. Now, why fourth on the list or third on the list here is, well, because fruit has the fruit sugar that the bacteria and the bacteria overgrowths and the yeast overgrowths really, really like. So it kind of throws them into a tizzy. So the lower glycemic index fruits, that's going to be like a non-ripe banana, the one you just got, and it's got some green on it, you know. And so the non-ripe banana, so as the banana ripens, it gets more sugar in it and gets sweeter. And so that means the yeast and the bacteria overgrowths go crazy. And then we've got, you know, so the greener the banana, right when you get it from the store, you know, how it's kind of almost got more texture to it. It's not as sweet, you know, so you can do that. Blueberry, cantaloupe, cranberry, any of the citrus, honeydew, kiwi, passion fruit, raspberry, blackberry, strawberry, boysenberry. All those are great, low glycemic, high antioxidant, but don't go nutso on them, you know, go like a serving a day. And then you can, you know, have them as your little treat, you know, especially, we're going to stay away from sugar for sure. Sugar, agave, honey, maple syrup, we're going to stay away from that. Why? Like we said, the bacteria and the yeast like to party with that. So you want to minimize that, and it's really inflammatory for the system. This is also going to help you if somebody's struggling with their blood sugar. So if their blood sugar is out of control, this will actually be useful too, because we're trying to, you know, lower inflammation, stabilize the GI, help the flora, not overfeed ourselves with carbs, you know. So here, let's say we're healing and healing and healing, and now we introduced these foods. When can I start with grain and beans? Get this question. So maybe this is down the road. Maybe this is a month or two down the road, or 3 months down the road. Grain is hard to break down. Grain is, you have to have a lot working in the upper GI to break down grain. You've got to have the pancreas doing great. You've got to have stomach acid. You got to, you know, have the flora doing well. You know, all of that needs to be kind of like up and at 'em so that you can break all that stuff down. So when I say people can kind of introduce some grain, maybe quinoa is a good one. We've got gluten-free oats, and we've got like wild rice. And I say those because they have the highest fiber. Fiber is going to add like a bulk, you know, bulk to the stool. It's also going to, these are going to be higher in protein, lower in carbohydrate. We're going to really probably start with even just a 1/4 cup, you know, so you might add this to your like vegetable mixture, you know, and that's okay. So you're not going to just eat like chicken and rice, and half of it's rice, half of the plate's rice, half of it and a little bit of chicken. That's a lot of carbohydrate for you, and that's a lot of inflammation. So what you might want to do is say, I'm going to do some quinoa, I'm going to throw some spinach in it, and I'm going to cook down some some other vegetables in there. So it's got like the ratio is really like vegetable heavy, and then not a lot of rice or quinoa, and then you've got your nice protein. That could work. That could work a lot, you know. So really modify your portions, And then beans also, just like grains, have to have a lot going on right in the digestive system in order to introduce. So the 3 kind of lowest inflammatory beans are going to be mung beans, chickpeas, and lentils. And again, you could pressure cook those. And very small amounts. Like we might be even talking like 2 to 4 tablespoons, of those. They're like a condiment. However much ketchup you would use, that's how much bean you get, so you're introducing it in a very low and slow way, right? To not shake your tree too quickly, right? Or too hard. And remember, we're building and building. We don't want, setbacks are going to happen, but we're not going to go for them. And if we do it this way, it's smarter, right? Now, let's talk about the Beeler's broth, because let's say you're vegetarian, right? That Beeler's broth, oh gosh, we learned about this like many years ago. So I'll just read the recipe here. It's 1 cup chopped leafy greens, and then you've got, and that's going to be like your spinach, your collard greens, your arugula, kale, romaine, bok choy, any of that stuff, green stuff. And so then you've got a bunch of herbs. You've got parsley, cilantro, nettle and dandelion. Those are good. You see them in the grocery store. You also see them in your yard. And so I was talking to one of my neighbors, and she lives in a place with an HOA, and they are just like, they will find you if you have a dandelion. And I was like, oh man, that's so sad, because they're like the best herb. Dandelions help your kidneys out. They are just so nutritious. There's dandelion root and dandelion leaf, they're edible. Like they really just do great. But I guess, same thing with the nettles. But nettles, they'll get you. They sting. It's just, you have to use gloves to get those. You could saute them, and that kind of, I don't know what it does to the stinger. It deactivates it. I don't know. It makes it so the stinger is not so stingy. And then nettle root and nettle leaf are used a lot too. Nettle tea is used quite a bit. So anyway, you'll see these in the grocery store. They're pretty cool. Or I suppose if you know that you didn't spray it with anything, you could definitely pick it and use it and stuff like that. But maybe research that a little bit so you can know. I know that nettles, in Texas, we have something called false nettles, and I think you can misidentify it. So it is what it is. But anyway, so here we've got that. So bunches of herbs. So you're going to do like a bunch of that. Here's a cup of chopped vegetables, like we mentioned, the zucchini. We've got, they in this soup allow for cauliflower and broccoli. You might have seen this changed over years. So maybe you are like, no, those hurt my stomach. So I'm going to do like carrot, celery, zucchini. You can vary this for yourself, and you're going to work with your doctor. So maybe you take away the cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and then here's the optional garlic, right? So anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to boil those down, and then you're just going to stick them in a blender, and you're going to blend them up, and then you're going to drink that. And you could add, flavor. You could add salt. You could add pepper. You could add, seasoning to it and make it a nice tasty soup for yourself. But the green things are, I think, what do it. And this was to kind of get things in a really easy form so that your IBS patient or whoever can kind of just, can use it and can break it down and drink it. So you can thin it out by adding more water. This you can put in the freezer for 6 months. Oh, the Gap soup, you can do that too. You can put that in the freezer for 6 months. And then you can drink it a couple times a day and stuff like that. So Beeler's broth, that one's a nice one. Gaps and Beeler's are going to be good. People ask me about juicing all the time. Juicing's a thing. You could do that. You got to watch the fruit, because people juice vegetables, and you ask, what are you juicing? And they're like, it's all fruit, and then maybe there's a little bit of spinach in there, So juicing's a nice thing, because raw, on an inflamed system, raw vegetables are really hard to do. It takes a lot to get the, and you'll know, like, if you eat, like, lettuce and immediately have pain and gas and stuff, and you're not ready for that, so you could do some juicing, though, because it's kind of extracting. It's like a little extraction, and you're using the nutrients out of the juice. I mean, you're losing some of the fiber, but maybe you can handle the fiber right now. That's okay. You're sick, right? So here, you can juice. one of my favorites is probably just a predominant celery type juice. So, and it varies, right? Because you don't know all the time what you're going to get out of your veggies. So a lot of these recipes are going to just be like taste it and there's not going to be exact. So all of you who like an exact recipe, like my sister, she wants exactly, and that's good. She cooks very consistently, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that is how you get consistency, is you tell people exactly what to measure. If you're saying this is roughly what I want you to do, it may or may not turn out in your kitchen, even if it turns out in mine, right? So yeah, juicing's like that. So you're gonna maybe like do 2 or 3 stalks of celery, depending how big they are, depending how much juice you get out of it. The good news is like you can juice for the week, you know, and you could store that in the fridge for the week. So that's what I kind of do. I'm like, well, if it tasted bad and I needed more like a green apple, always kind of freshens up the juice, or citrus freshens up the juice. That's a way to add flavor without getting carbs to it. That's awesome. Celery, cilantro, parsley, any of those herbs are great to juice. They just freshen things up. Mint is nice. You know, ginger's a good thing to juice. So adds a ton of flavor and you don't need much ginger. So now you're throwing all that in there, and that's a good greens juice, right? So let's say you do that in mid-morning. Let's say you do that for lunch, and then, excuse me, let's say you do then your dinner, which is like a protein and a vegetable. Like, that's really okay to do. You can do that for lots of reasons. Anti-inflammatory, reducing the blood sugar, changing your metabolism. That's okay. There's also, like, say, carrot juice. Carrot you gotta watch because there's some carbs to it, even in the juice. But maybe you do carrot, ginger, back at work. You could do like your beets drinks, beets and apple. That gets a little carby, you know, so, but maybe if you know, kind of watch it. Pineapple's a really nice thing to add as well, but you have to really portion control it. Don't go crazy with it, because then the carbs go really high with it. It's great to add a little bit of stuff like that for flavor, but you don't have to, you know, add a ton of it. So things like that, I would kind of monitor the amount you're putting in there. But yeah, there's a ton of really cool juice recipes out there, and really most of it is use your own taste buds. If you're like, this tastes too bitter, then go ahead, add a little bit more cucumber. That thins it out. Or you could add a little bit more citrus to it, you know, however you like it. I don't like kale. I have tried and tried and tried. I just don't like it. I don't like juiced kale. I'm always like, hold the juice. But I love cilantro. Some people, when they taste cilantro, it tastes like soap. So that's not me. So that's good. But if you hate cilantro, if you're one of those people, then maybe you love kale, or maybe you change it to something else like parsley or something. So those are great. So yeah, we talked about like kind of how to introduce some food after you've been sick, or after you had a surgery, or your flare up of whatever, you know. These are just easy peasy ways. And I'll link the handouts that I have. These are the handouts I give my patients. And yeah, if you have any tips and tricks, I always love learning new things, especially with cooking. All right, everybody, I'm going to stop rambling and get back to work. I have a lot to do. Okay, see you later. Have fun.